Grab a cup of tea or listen as you go, ladies. This is your hour with Dr. Zoe, your life and relationship coach. With encouragement, on-point insight, inspiring guests, health tips, and advice, Dr. Zoe helps busy women keep their mind in the game by redefining your superwoman. You're listening to The Dr. Zoe Show.
Welcome to The Dr. Zoe Show, redefining your superwoman. I'm your host, Dr. Zoe. I'm a licensed psychotherapist with a doctorate in clinical psychology. I'm a life and relationship coach and a motivational speaker, and I can work with you virtually to help you get unstuck. My passion is helping women find their superpower, learn to embrace it, and share it with the world. Connect with me by texting the word JOIN to 38470 or go to my website at drzoeshaw.com. And you can always check out my social at Dr. Zoe Shaw. So today's topic is Your Facade is Showing with my host, Debbie London. She is a book consultant and author, and we are going to talk about those facades that women sometimes bring into all of our relationships and how they affect it. But first, my win and my fail. So my win is that I actually stole a little strategy that my sister uses with her kids. She's got 2 boys when they aren't getting along, and so I decided to use it for myself. My older boys never argued like my younger girls do. And boy, I am so tired of being a referee. So what she does is she has her kids, when they disagree or have a fight, hold hands and sit on the couch. Now, I think that that's just like the extent of it. And that's just kind of them, her teaching and modeling to them to reconnect. Well, my girls are always arguing. And today it was about Barbies and LOL dolls. So if any of you women out there have girls, you know exactly what a LOL doll is, if you have young girls. And so I had them get on the couch and sit and hold hands until they were able to come to an agreement. Now, I've actually been doing this for a week or 2, and it's marvelous. I'm no longer the referee, and they are learning to negotiate and come to an agreement because they both want to get off the couch. So it's pretty cool. It's working. So there's a little tip too. So that's my win. So my fail is that I missed parent-teacher conference at my daughter's school. And here's how I've realized I missed it. I'm literally in my office with clients whose daughter happens to go to my daughter's school, and they had to leave early to go to parent-teacher conference night. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, tonight's parent-teacher conference? It was too late though, because I had clients right after them and I missed it. I'm still not quite sure how I missed the parent-teacher conference because I don't remember seeing the paperwork. But anyway, that was my fail. So next up, listen in on my conversation with Debbie London, and we're going to talk about all those ways that we come to relationships with facades and what types of facades we have and how they affect our relationships.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I'm excited to have you here on the show. I feel like it's been a while because we've been kind of trying to make this happen, and I'm so glad we finally got to it.
I am too. Timing is absolutely everything. I remember seeing you on Instagram and I was like, oh my God, I would love to work with her. So I'm glad that you circled back around, and I am so happy and privileged to be on your show.
Oh, thank you so much. I don't know if it's daily, but your videos are just so inspirational, and I can tell you have so much wisdom. And of course, I read your book, and there's a lot of wisdom you've gained on your journey. So I'm excited to share that with the guests. And we're going to talk about something that is there every day in our lives, but it's one of those unspoken things, and that's the facade that humans really, but hey, we're talking about women. The facade that we women sometimes put on in all of our relationships, and how that affects our ability to connect and really get the intimacy that we want in our lives, or really it keeps us from being able to get the intimacy we want in our lives. So I'm excited to talk about that with you. But first, of course, we got to hear your Superwoman win and your Superwoman fail. So can you share that, please?
Well, my Superwoman win, especially for this week, And I think it's kind of cool that we're actually talking about facades today, because I'm the type of person that even though I already wrote the book or I wrote the blog or whatever it is, I always refer back to my own material to kind
Of
of
course.
take my own advice. But this week, my win was just kind of identifying from a previous relationship that realizing that I was still drawn to an ex because of where I was in the space that I was with them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We reconnected after like 10 years. I'm not that old.
So wait, we're talking about a win or a fail here?
This is a win.
This is a win.
This is a win.
Okay. So you reconnected after 10 years.
We reconnected after 10 years, and we thought maybe we could pick up where we left off. Now, mind you, this is like a high school sweetheart, throughout college situation. So mindset, maturity, everything has completely changed from now until then. But I realized I had to deeply examine, why is that attraction still there? Why do you feel like there's unfinished business there when it's not? So I just feel like my win for this week was being able to recognize that the brokenness that I had as a teenager and as a young woman in college is not who I am now. So trying to rekindle and revisit something old is not going to serve me in any way, because I'm not moving backwards. I'm moving forwards. And in trying to press the issue for something like that to happen, it would have pushed me back. And so I really feel like that's a win for this week more than anything, because this literally just happened where I had this huge revelation was, no, I'm not, I'm not doing this, and I'm not going there, and I'm not revisiting this thing again, because you're not good for me. And understanding, we kind of romanticize, that little, oh, my first love, maybe we can whatever. And it's like, no, this is what it is. I'm accepting it for what it is, and just taking my own advice that I've given to my readers or my clients and anyone else. That was a huge one for me. And I feel like that was just a final piece of the past that has been resolved.
You had to let go.
Exactly.
Yes. Good job. Congratulations. It's funny because I have had even a similar, not, an ex or anything like that. Obviously I'm married, but I had a similar experience with that whole concept of slipping back, into a place that you've grown out of. I had that same experience, and I was actually telling my husband, I'm not going back there, and I feel myself slipping there, and it's so easy because, like you said, sometimes you forget you've overcome your brokenness, and it's easy because that is in some ways the foundation of where we are right now. But so good that you saw that process, because a lot of times we don't. And that happens a lot sometimes when we go back to our family of origins. It's easy to slip back into, being somebody that we've grown out of. So good job that you saw it and you made that turn and didn't get yourself, let yourself go down that path before you had to figure it out. So great win.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's hear your little fail. Maybe not so little.
My fail, I'm trying to think, what was my fail this week? Okay, so I am a self-publishing consultant, and I normally book discovery calls with potential clients. And I finally had like a eureka moment this week that I've been failing my clients in one area. But I quickly fixed it, and I'm already seeing the results of fixing this one thing because
What area was it?
Well, it was unintentional, but I wasn't listening, honestly.
Oh, were you distracted?
Not necessarily distracted, but I noticed the majority of the people that come to me have yet to start their books. Majority. Okay. And I realized that everyone, if you give them all the tools and the steps, that doesn't mean that they're going to take the leap and get it done. So I had to add an additional offering for accountability and support to assist them along with them, doing it on their own, just having me there to help them through the process. And I realized I was failing them because I was kind of like, all right, and go. Here's everything you need and go do it. And I started just listening very intently. Like, what are they all saying they need? I need accountability. I need support in the beginning, because I have those offerings for when your manuscript is complete. I have 2 of those, the additional support and hand holding, so to speak. It's just like the training wheels of the writing process. And I just finally had my aha moment And I was like, idiot, come on. They need you in the beginning.
They
You
do.
can't just, give them everything, even though it's detailed, it's thorough. You can't just leave them with that. You have to give them that additional support for those that feel like they're going to talk themselves out of the process or, let fear get a hold of them, whatever it may be. Or if they feel like they're confused and they don't trust what they're doing, even though they have it right in front of them, just having that additional support and accountability to stick everything through. So I feel like that was my fail because I was like, been doing this for so long.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I have learned as a therapist and as a coach is that the reality is that so many people need a lot more hand-holding than you think or than even they realize. And there are a lot of people that are not going to do it. And we have to be okay with that too. We have to give them what we can, and we have to handhold for them as much as possible. And some people need to be handheld for years before they make that step. And that's okay too. So, okay, so it's a fail in that you realize you hadn't been doing it, but it's also a win because you're recognizing that and now you're going to make that shift in your consulting business. So that's pretty cool.
Yes, ma'am. I'm giving you something recent.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so for you listeners out there, Debbie London, as I probably mentioned in the intro, is a self-publishing consultant. So if you have a book in you, this is the woman you need to be contacting.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get started. Your book is Your Facade is Showing. Can you give my listeners a little bit of background of in your life and how you got to this point of writing this book? And then we're going to talk about the different facades that women present in all of our relationships that really hinder us.
Well, this book came about because even though you can read my books out of order, my first book is about generational curses and soul ties. And at that point, I take people through the journeys of just overcoming generational trauma and breaking many different toxic cycles. And then I talk about the soul tie that I encountered in college, how I broke that into different types of soul ties and so forth and so on. But I was married still.
Okay, so for listeners who are listening, what is a soul tie?
A soul tie is a connection or attachment that you have to someone that is negative and is spiritual. And typically you cannot pinpoint it because when we feel like, oh, I can't stop thinking about them. Oh, I feel like darkness has come over my life since I began to deal with this person, or things have begun to go downhill, or sometimes it can reveal itself as literal demonic attacks like mine did. So it really varies. It can come in the form of depression. It can come in the form of anxiety. It can come in the form of you just lacking all motivation when normally you're a go-getter, all because you're dealing with someone that you shouldn't be.
Somebody you need to get out of your life.
Exactly.
Because they're draining you and really hindering you and hurting you in various ways.
Absolutely.
Okay, so your first book is about that and how you recognized it and how you were able to release yourself from it.
Exactly. So before I finished writing my first book, God was like, hey, write down Your Facade is Showing. And I said, okay, I'm going to write that down, but I haven't finished this book. So can we finish this book before? And he's, oh, don't worry, we'll just come back to it. And sure enough, a little over a year later, my marriage abruptly ended. And this was in August of 2017. It's funny, but it's not. But when it ended, God was like, surprise, you're going to write about relationships. And I'm like, oh, okay. But then it made sense that Your Facade is Showing. It made absolutely no sense when I first got the title, but everything came together then. And I've never been one to want to talk about relationships because I don't like to speak on them, or I didn't like to speak on them because I just feel like anybody can tell you how to have a good relationship. And then behind the scenes, theirs is in complete shambles. So it's always been a thing of mine to stay away, but because everything I do is God led, I just have to be obedient to whatever it is that He tells me to do, no matter how uncomfortable. So in writing Your Facade is Showing, it's not a book that's bashing marriage. I am pro marriage. I love like a lot. Love makes me feel gooey. I love seeing other people in love. Like it makes me very happy. However, this book is about accountability for yourself. It's not even pointing the finger at my ex-husband and what he did wrong, more so than, okay, what did I miss? There were things that I overlooked, and a lot of us are in the same boat where we've overlooked so much in relationships in the name of love that when everything kind of
Absolutely.
implodes, you can trace it back like, hey, I overlooked this, 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 and this. It just became more magnified as time went on. And how can you avoid that? How do we avoid that
Right.
moving forward in future relationships?
Excellent. And yes, I see that so much in my practice. So many women will say, well, I knew this, but you do excuse it. And like you talked in your book, you know, you want this person to fit into this mold. And there's sometimes a desperation of, you know, really wanting that relationship to work. And so you overlook a lot of things and you kind of make excuses for a lot of things. And eventually in a relationship, those things are going to come to a head. So let's talk about the type of facades. So sometimes going into relationships, and whether it's a romantic relationship, it's a friendship relationship, even business relationship, we can make the mistake of presenting these facades, which are generally based in shame. So what are the types of facades that women sometimes bring into relationships?
Well, I've seen this happen and I've been guilty of it myself in my younger days, is we'll try to fit into whatever box or whatever we feel the person may like. Like, ooh, he likes women who do X, Y, and Z. So let me try to be that.
Right.
Let me try to fit that for him so I can be his ideal woman. And that's a facade within itself because you're not going to be able to maintain that because it's not you. You should be comfortable enough in your own skin to be who you are. And if they don't like that, well, then guess what? They're just not for you.
They're not for you. Yes.
But sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow, because like you mentioned the word desperation, there's such desperation at times. It is like, well, whatever it is that I need to do or I have to do to get a man or to keep them, let me try and do that. And then the relationship just loses all authenticity at that point because you're not even starting off with the foundation of being true to who you are. You're trying to be what you think that they want and need.
Right.
Instead of being yourself. So I really believe that one of the facades is just not being yourself and trying to not even accommodate, but just doing what you feel is going to earn this person's love. But that goes into a validation issue as well. Like, why do you feel the need to try to be validated? Why do you feel like you on your own are not good enough or are not worthy enough to give and receive love from someone at this point, just being who you are?
And sometimes that comes from very early in life, what we learn about ourselves and that we learn that maybe we have to present ourselves a certain way or be a certain way to gain approval, from our parents or from people in our lives. But I think that that is probably a big mistake that a lot of women make. I can certainly see how I've done that in my relationships too, and hiding, what you perceive to be your flaws. But the amazing thing is that I've learned over life is that things that we are the most shameful of, things that we perceive as flaws, other people don't necessarily even see it that way. People are so much more accepting when you are honest about yourself, and we judge ourselves so much harder than most people judge us. If you just give yourself that freedom that you talk about to just be who you are, oh my gosh, the weight that's lifted and the health of being able to live in that freedom is pretty darn amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the second one you talked about, or one of them, is being a savior. And I talked about this in an article I wrote about how like your romantic partner cannot be your charity case.
Yes. Yes. And, that is tied to codependency.
It is codependency. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And in hindsight, I wish I would have really dug into codependency in the book because that is a huge part of it. But, it's weird. Like, I know that I struggled with codependency at some point, and I was able to break free from that. But outside looking in at people that I've dated that have struggled with it as well, or in their previous relationships, they would put the cape on immediately because I was in a different space of wholeness and I didn't need fixing, so to speak. They could not mesh with me at all because they wanted to be with people who needed fixing.
Yep.
And as women being natural nurturers, sometimes we can take on that role. Like, oh, well, he has so much potential. Maybe if I help him get a job, maybe if I help him, work on his anger, and maybe if I can help him, take care of his kids, whatever it is, you're looking for a way to patch him up and make
Right.
him like Mr. Perfect, when that's not going to happen. That is
The fantasy. Yes.
exactly. You're just feeding into that potential, and it's just going to leave you disappointed because you're trying to save someone and create someone to be something that they're ultimately not. If they wanted to be a certain way, they would be that way. If that makes sense.
It does.
Like, oh, I feel more comfortable trying to fix somebody. That's my lane. But it's like, really, as we just mentioned, that's wrapped up in codependency. You're looking for a sense of belonging or a sense of use.
Worth. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you don't need to look to someone else's brokenness to try to make you feel worthy when you need to be patched up yourself. So it's kind of a weird, layered, multi-layered thing. It's like you want someone to fix because you need fixing, but to avoid your own stuff, let me help you instead and attach myself to you instead so I can have a sense of worth. It's pretty interesting, but that is definitely a facade.
I'm writing that down because I'm going to use that as a meme. You said you don't need to look to someone else's brokenness. What did you say?
You don't need to look for someone else's brokenness to make you feel whole. Like you're looking to them to fix your own issues.
Yeah.
But since you want to avoid yours, you're like, oh, let me fix yours so I can avoid mine. And it's pretty much a waste of time. It's also like brokenness attracts brokenness as well. And you attracting that, are you really getting to where you want to be romantically and in any of your other relationships? No, because you're keeping yourself kind of bound at that same level where you're not moving forward in your relationships or not receiving the love that you feel that you deserve because you keep accepting less.
Right.
Because you haven't resolved your own issues within.
Exactly. And people do this in romantic relationships and they do it in friendships. Yeah. I mean, codependency is not just in romantic relationships, but that is so true. I love that. You don't need to look for someone else's brokenness to make you feel whole. So another type of facade is thinking the relationship should be problem-free. How is that a facade?
Correct me if I'm wrong here, Doc, but it's almost like a little narcissistic in my opinion, because when it goes outside of the bounds of being the fairy tale, like everything is wrong. It has to be perfect at every point for some people. And if it does not fall in line to being in this perfect little box of perfection, then it's wrong. And I know people who have put so much pressure on relationships. I mean, down to what they want their spouse to wear, how they want them to act and be in public, behind the scenes. Oh, I wish you didn't laugh so much. I've seen it go to extreme levels where people want that perfection because anything that goes outside of that, they don't feel like they're in control. So they're looking to control the person and the relationship since they feel so out of control internally.
So it almost feels like it's something we call like groupthink, like it's a joint facade that someone wants to create in a relationship instead of actually having the intimacy.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. And, we could, I'm sure, see that in a lot of, especially celebrity couples and things like that, where it's like, let's create this facade because this is who people want us to be, or this is how we want to be perceived. But then when you're so busy doing that, you lack the ability to connect on a real deep emotional level.
Exactly. And that's exactly what makes it a facade. Again, going back to lacking authenticity. Why, when you want something it's real, why does authenticity scare you? Conflict scare you because conflict is something that is going to happen. It's okay when it does. It's just all about how you handle it and work through it. But some people, conflict reminds them of dark times in their life. So I'm going to avoid it at all costs. And I need you to be perfect so that I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. And speaking of conflict, I want to talk about this last facade, which when I read that, I was like, oh, and I totally see how I have done this in relationships. And I think a lot of women are guilty of, and that's pretending to be okay when it's not. And a lot of people don't recognize that as, oh, I'm trying to create this fake self in a relationship. But that is such a big one that I think is, it's a passive way of creating a facade and probably even more detrimental.
I feel like with that one, we get stuck with feeling like we have to have every single thing on our backs.
Mm-hmm.
And if we aren't able to handle and tackle every single thing, for whatever reason, it makes us feel like we failed and that we haven't done our due diligence. And being a Black woman, I see it so much in our community, especially with okay, I have to wear the pants. I have to, work very hard and I have to, climb this success ladder and then I'll be worthy. It's like a deeper, almost generational healing of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird pathology that's there. And I've just seen it time and time again. If I don't, give the impression that everything is okay and all good, then I have failed. Something is wrong with me. I'm not doing everything that I possibly could. It's okay to not be okay. It is totally okay to not be okay. And I feel like that's not pressed into women in general enough that it's okay not to be okay. You don't have to carry the load. You don't have to take everything on. It's okay if you need to crumble a little bit. We don't want you to stay there and wallow, but it's okay to feel those feelings and go about them in a healthy manner so that you can breathe and reset and recharge and move forward again. And going back to the word worthy, I see that all of these like pretty much tie in, but it's a worthiness thing too. If I am not successful in this relationship or give the image of having it all together, then I'm going to fail here and this won't work out.
Yeah, and that's an outside image and a facade you're putting on for the outside. But I'm also thinking about internally in the relationship is when he does something or somebody you're in relationship with does something that is offensive, that bothers you, and not speaking up.
Absolutely.
That's also a facade, even though you're not actively putting something forward by not speaking up and not speaking your truth and letting them know, then you're creating this fake facade of it's okay. But what happens is it also teaches the other person not to respect you.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with that because I talk about in the book parts of my marriage where, okay, I'm a huge talker. I love talking. I love people. I love communication. But my ex-husband was not big on communication. And I felt very emotionally neglected during that time. However, I just kind of let it happen in the beginning. And I set the tone for what I was going to accept in my marriage.
Exactly.
And, I talk about just that hindsight throughout the book. Like, I knew what type of person he was, but I proceeded anyway because I had issues that were unresolved within myself. And I felt like, okay, well, you have to deal with this. And, it's okay. He's a nice person. It's okay. Well, since he's nice, it doesn't matter that, he doesn't communicate with you in the manner that you need or doesn't make an effort. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Like, we'll just keep doing this because he's a good dad and because he's this and because he's that. We can deal with this one little thing and minimalizing how I felt. As you said, like it is a lack of respect for yourself because you're teaching them how to treat you ultimately.
Right. And so the key when we look at all of those facades, I think it's probably two things. It's being willing to look at yourself and recognize what you're doing. And maybe, you listeners out there, if you're thinking about your relationships, take a minute to reflect. Have I participated in any of these behaviors, especially some of the covert ones? How have I put a facade up in my relationship that keeps me from being able to connect and be willing to have the difficult conversations, which is so hard. And I say that from a place of personal experience. It's so hard sometimes to have those difficult conversations and we build it up and we make an assumption that, someone won't accept us or that it's going to create conflict. But what we have to realize is that the conflict is created in keeping silent as well.
Absolutely. It really is. And, the example of having just a shaken up soda bottle. That's all you're doing. You're keeping everything bottled in, and as soon as you cannot take any more pressure, you're exploding. And it almost seems like it's coming from out of nowhere, but it's your responsibility to address things as they come. So that you're taking care of you first and foremost, and then you're able to proceed in the relationship in a healthy manner as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Debbie, for coming on and talking to women about some important stuff. Our facade, we got to take that facade off. Do you have any last minute tips for anyone who's recognizing themselves in this place going, ooh, ouch, that's me?
I guess I just want to say that whatever it is that you have going on, your intuition never fails you. And I'm not saying anything coming from an insecure place at all. I am saying like your God-given gut feeling. You know when things are awry. You know when they are off. Trust yourself. And that's really what this book is about. Like you already know. You already know what you've been ignoring. You already know what it is that you need to do. It is up to you to trust yourself and take the proper steps accordingly so that you can be healthy, so that you can have the love that you want, and so that you don't accept less than what you deserve. But it starts with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, best of luck in all of your endeavors. And if anyone's got a book in them, Debbie's the one you need to contact.
All righty. Thank you so much for having me.
What a great conversation with Debbie. I hope that if you saw some of the facades that you're carrying around in your life and relationships, that you were able to see your patterns and work on changing them. So I haven't done health tips in a super long time. And so my health tip today is really a mental health tip, and it's about cleaning up your social media. I was talking to a client, and I was talking about promoting her business on social media. And she told me how much she hates social media because it's so negative, and how it affects her. Now, we all know about the studies of that. We understand that social media has been known to cause depression because you're looking at things and imagining that other people's worlds are better than your own. But as she was talking about all the stuff that comes through on her feed and how negative it was, I started thinking, that's not my experience. My feed is positive. When I go to my Instagram, now I'm not on Twitter because I actually just choose not to. Well, I'm on Twitter. You guys can go there and see me on Twitter, but I don't hang out on Twitter. I hang out on Instagram and a little bit on Facebook. But what I realized is that whole thought came into my head that you are a culmination of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And of course, we know our world now is almost as much virtual as it is, IRL in real life. So that applies to your social media. And as my client was telling me that, I was thinking, my social media is positive. I can go to my Instagram to be motivated, to be encouraged. The reality is that social media is a wise machine. It is a brain machine, and it knows you. So it studies your behavior. It knows what you click on. It knows what you spend the most time on. It knows what you gravitate towards. And that's what it feeds you. So 2 things. Number 1, your social media is feeding you a mirror of who you are, because that's what you seek out and click on. And then number 2, you cultivate your feed by the people that you follow. So if you're following mostly negative people and you're clicking and checking on things that are mostly negative, then that is what your feed is going to be. That is what you're allowing yourself to be influenced by. Now, I do follow a lot of people, but my social media is motivational. I click on there and I'm getting information from authors and writers and motivators and psychotherapists and major influencers, because those are the things that I cultivate in my feed. Now, I have friends, obviously, who I follow, but I'll tell you what, when something negative comes up in my feed, I mute that person. Now, I don't delete them. I don't block them. I don't do all of those kinds of things. I just mute the notifications. So my friends never know that I've muted them, but if they're not serving me, if they aren't pumping anything into my life that is beneficial, then I'm going to mute them. And if you are experiencing social media in a super negative way, especially Instagram, just remember that you created that and that's a mirror of what you seek out. And if you want it to be different, change it. Delete people, mute them, follow people who are inspirational and motivational. So there's my little mental health tip for the day. So thanks for tuning into the Dr. Zoe Show. New shows go up on Tuesdays. Subscribe so you don't miss a show. If you're interested in coaching or therapy, or you just want to get a little more help, go to my website at drzoeshaw.com or any of my social medias at the handle Dr. Zoe Shaw. Join my free newsletter. I give out Sunday motivation weekly, and who doesn't like that? You can join my newsletter by texting the word join to 38470, and I look forward to speaking with you wonderful ladies on social media throughout the week. Have a super week.
You've been listening to The Dr. Zoe Show, redefining your superwoman, with your host, Dr. Zoe Shaw. Don't forget to sign up for her monthly newsletters to get encouragement, tips, and skills for keeping your mind in the superwoman game. Connect with her now at www.drzoeshaw.com. Tell your friends and subscribe to her podcast on iTunes. Join us next time for another edition of The Dr. Zoe Show.